Once upon a time, in the great savannah, lay the thriving village of Udara. It was a place of simple joys, where the laughter of children filled the air and the aroma of roasted yams wafted from every homestead. The people of Udara were known for their bountiful harvest and a life of modest contentment. At the center of this bustling village stood a grand iroko tree. Its ancient branches stretched towards the heavens. The elders said it was sacred, a gift from the gods, and its shades was a gathering spot for storytelling, music, and community decisions. Beneath this tree, the fate of Udara was often shaped, and it was here that the story of Okeke, a man whose name would forever be whispered with caution, began to unfold. Okeke was no ordinary man. He was born into a family of farmers. He had always stood apart, not for wealth or his deeds, but for his unrelenting ambition. From a very young age, Okeke had dreamed of riches beyond what his hands could reap from the soil. While others toiled in the fields with smiles on their faces, grateful for the fruit of their labor, Okeke's eyes would wander to the horizon, where he would imagine treasures waiting to be claimed. His father, Nkem, a humble and wise man, often tried to guide him. Okeke, he would say, wealth is not in just gold and silver. It is in the peace of the heart and the love of family. But these words fell on deaf ears. To Okeke, peace and love are not the things he needs if he is unable to fill his belly or clothe his body in fine robes. He wanted more. He wanted it all. As the years passed, Okeke's obsession with wealth grew. He watched enviously as merchants from distant lands arrived at the village with their shiny wares. Golden trinkets, silk fabrics, and spices that filled the air with tantalizing scents. He imagined himself among them, adored in luxury, commanding respect and admiration. His longing became a consuming fire that burned brighter with every passing day. One fateful evening, as the villagers gathered under the iroko tree to celebrate the harvest festival, a stranger arrived in Udara. He was unlike anyone in the villagers had ever even seen. He was clad in robes of glittering green with a turban adorned with a single ruby. He introduced himself as Ezugo, a merchant from a distant kingdom, and his arrival caused quite a stir. Ezugo spoke of lands where the rivers sparkled with gold and the trees bore fruits as large as a man's head. He told tales of kings who feasted on dishes served in golden bowls and of markets where one could buy anything their hearts desired. The villagers listened with wide eyes, captivated by his stories, but no one was as intrigued as Okeke. That night, as the festivities wound down and the villagers returned to their homes, Okeke approached Ezugo. Wise merchants, how can a man like me attain such wealth as you speak of? I am tired of this life of scraping and toiling for more scraps. Ezugo looked at him with a sly smile. Wealth, my friend, comes to those who are willing to pay the price. Are you willing to do whatever it takes? Without hesitation, Okeke nodded. I will do anything. The merchant's eyes gleamed with a strange light. Very well, he said, producing a small ornate box from his satchel. Inside this box lies your path to fortune. But be warned, you must be ready to pay the price. Think hard. Are you prepared to pay it? Okeke barely heard the warning. His hands trembled as he reached for the box, his heart racing with anticipation. Ezugo handed it over and disappeared into the night, leaving Okeke alone beneath the iroko tree, clutching the mysterious box to his chest. When he returned home, Okeke opened the box to find a single shiny cowrie shell and a note written in a language he could not understand. Confused but relentless, he took the box to the village elder, who was known for his wisdom and knowledge of ancient scripts. The elder examined the note, his face darkening as he read the words. "This is no ordinary gift," Okeke said gravely. "The shell is a symbol of great power, but it is also a curse. It will bring you riches, yes, but it will take from you something far greater. You must let this go." But Okeke's mind was already made up. What could be greater than wealth? "You speak in riddles, old man. I will make my own path," he said as he snatched the bust back. And so, Okeke began his journey. With his shell in his possession, his fortunes changed overnight. His crops flourished beyond belief, yielding twice the harvest of his neighbors. Traders flocked to him, eager to buy his goods at high prices. He acquired land, cattle, and slaves, and his name became synonymous with prosperity. But as Okeke's wealth grew, so did his arrogance. He began to look down on the villagers who had once been his equal. He refused to share his bounty or even help those in need, claiming that they were lazy and undeserving. Even his family felt the sting of his transformation. His father Nkem, who had once been his guiding light, now seemed like a relic of a life Okeke wanted to forget. "Father," Okeke said one day, "you have worked all your life, and what do you have to show for it? A thatched hut and a patch of land. Let me show you how a wealthy man lives." But Nkem shook his head. "My son, you have gained the world, but lost your soul. I fear for you." Okeke dismissed his father's words, too blinded by his newfound power to see the truth. And after a year, Okeke's wealth grew beyond what anyone in Udara could have imagined. His farms were bursting with yams and millets, and his herds of cattle roamed the vast fields. His compound, once a simple thatched hut, had now been transformed into a magnificent compound with high walls and a grand gate carved with his name. The villagers could only marvel at his transformation. Children sang songs of his riches, and the women whispered stories of his audacity. He was now Okeke, the great man. His once loving family grew distant. His father Nkem, who had been his voice of reason, stopped visiting. His friends no longer came to share in his joy, for Okeke had become insufferable, treating those around him as lesser beings unworthy of his presence. "You have changed, my son," Nkem told him one fateful afternoon when Okeke hesitantly allowed his father into his estate. "Wealth has made your heart hard. Can you not see how lonely you have become?" "Lonely? I am surrounded by riches, father. I have everything I could ever want," Okeke scoffed. Nkem shook his head. "Wealth is a house without windows if there is no love to warm it." Okeke dismissed his father's words, as he always did. But there were moments in the dead of the night when the weight of silence pressed down on him and the halls of his estate echoed with emptiness. As the seasons changed, Okeke's fortune took a darker turn. His cattle began to die mysteriously. Strong, healthy animals collapsed without warning, their eyes covered with death. His crops, once lush and bountiful, wilted under the blazing sun and abundant rainfall. Even his gold and silver seemed to lose their gleam, tarnishing faster than they should. But Okeke was not a man to be easily defeated. "These are just trials. I will overcome them as I always have," he told himself. Desperate to save his fortunes, Okeke sought the advice of medicine men and priests. They performed rituals, sacrificed animals, and chanted incantations, but nothing seemed to reverse his misfortunes. The more he sought to control his fate, the more it spiraled out of control. One evening, as the sunset casting long down shadows, wow, I'll take that again. Pick up. One evening, as the sun set, casting long shadows across the village, Okeke stood by his dying fields. His heart was heavy, and for the first time in years, doubt crept into his mind. Was this the price Ezugo had warned him about? The memory of that night under the Iroko tree came rushing back. The merchant's sly smile, the cryptic warning, and the strange cowrie shell that had brought him untold riches. Okeke's breath quickened as realization dawned upon him. He had never truly considered the cost of his wealth. Determined to find answers, Okeke set out on a journey to find Ezugo. He traveled across vast savannas, through dense forests and over winding rivers. Days turned into weeks, and his once proud figure became gaunt with exhaustion. His fine robes were torn, and his sandals wore thin. But he pressed on, driven by a desperate need to undo the curse that had befallen him. One moonlight night, as he wandered through the desolate forest, Okeke stumbled upon a glowing path that led to a clearing. There, seated on a rock under a gnarled tree, was Ezugo. The merchant looked exactly as he had years ago, untouched by time. "So you have returned," Ezugo said, his voice smooth and knowing. Okeke fell to his knees. "Please, wise merchant, take back the shell. I have lost everything. My family despises me. My crops have failed, and the cattle are dead. What must I do to end this misery?" Ezugo's eyes gleamed. "I warned you, did I not? Wealth comes at a price. You were blinded by greed and arrogance, and now you seek redemption? But I'm afraid it is too late." No, there must be a way. I will do anything," Okeke cried. The merchant regarded him with a hint of pity. "Very well," he said. "There is one thing you can do, but it will not be easy. You must return to your village. Seek out every person you have wronged and ask for their forgiveness. Only when your heart is truly humbled will the curse be lifted." Okeke's pride bristled at the thought. He had spent years looking down on villagers, treating them as insignificant. How could he now lower himself to beg for their forgiveness? But desperation trumped pride. With a heavy heart, Okeke began the long journey back to Udara. The once great man who had left the village in search of answers returned as a shadow of his former self. His grand estate was in ruins, overtaken by weeds and decay. The villagers who once envied him now looked upon him with a mixture of pity and scorn. Swallowing his pride, Okeke went from house to house seeking forgiveness. Some villagers slammed their door to his face, unwilling to forget the years of mistreatment. Others listened to his pleas, moved by the sincerity in his voice. The most difficult visit was to his father's home. Nkem, now frail and bent with age, sat by the fire, his face illuminated by the light. "Father," Okeke said, "I have wronged you and dishonored our family. I was blinded by greed and forgot the values you tried to teach me. Please, find it in your heart to forgive me." Nkem's eyes softened. "My son, a father never stops loving his child. I've been waiting for this moment." He embraced Okeke, and for the first time in years, the heavy burden on Okeke's heart began to lift. The transformation was gradual but undeniable. As Okeke's heart softened, his fortunes began to change. His crops flourished once more, and his cattle grew strong. But more importantly, he found peace in the love and forgiveness of his family and the village. The journey was far from easy, but Okeke had learned a lesson that wealth alone could never teach. True riches lay not in gold and silver, but in humility, love, and the bonds of community. Okeke returned to Udara. It was a story that spread across the region like wildfire. Villagers gathered at the market square, whispering how the once proud man had humbled himself, going door to door, seeking forgiveness. Some thought it was a miracle, while others doubted the sincerity of his transformation. But one thing was clear. The Okeke who had left the village in search of wealth was not the same man who had returned. His once grand estate, now covered in weeds and thorns, stood as a symbol of his fall from glory. Okeke wasted no time in rebuilding, but this time, he did things differently. Instead of hiring strangers from distant towns, he called upon the villagers to help. Carpenters, builders, and laborers from Udara gathered at his compound, their tools clinking and echoing through the air. "I will pay you fairly for your work," Okeke promised, "and when the harvest comes, we will all share in the bounty." At first, the villagers were skeptical. Was this another trick from a man who had once treated them with disdain? But as the days turned into weeks, Okeke's sincerity became evident. He walked alongside them, sweating under the scorching sun, lifting heavy logs and mixing mud for bricks. The people of Udara had never seen such humility from a man of his former stature, and slowly their hearts softened towards him. One evening, as the village gathered around a crackling fire to share stories and laughter, Okeke stood up. His voice, once commanding and filled with arrogance, was now gentle and sincere. "I have wronged you all. I have allowed greed and pride to blind me, forgetting the values that bind us together as a community. But I stand before you all today not as the wealthy Okeke you once knew, but as a man who has learned the true meaning of life. Wealth without love and humility is a curse." And at that moment, silence filled the air, and then an elder who had once been one of Okeke's harshest critics spoke up. "It takes a strong man to admit his mistakes and seek forgiveness. You have shown us that change is possible." The crowd erupted into cheers and applause. Children danced around the fire and women sang songs of joy. Okeke's heart swelled with gratitude, and for the first time in years, he felt truly at peace. But there was one final task that Okeke knew he had to complete. A journey back to the sacred Iroko tree where it had all begun. He needed to return the cowrie shell to Ezugo and free himself from the last remnant of the curse. At dawn, Okeke set out, accompanied by Nkem and a few elders. The journey was long and arduous, but Okeke's resolve was unshakable. When they reached the clearing where the Iroko tree stood tall and majestic, a hush fell over the group. The air was thick with an ancient energy that seemed to hum through the leaves. Ezugo was waiting for them, his eyes gleaming with the same mysterious light Okeke remembered from years ago. "You have returned," Ezugo said. His voice was smooth and knowing. "I see that you have learned your lesson." Okeke knelt before the merchant, holding out the cowrie shell. "I return this to you, wise one. I no longer seek wealth for wealth's sake. I only seek peace and the love of my people." Ezugo took the shell and smiled. "You have done well, Okeke. True wealth lies not in what you possess, but in the strength of your heart and the bonds you forge with others. Go now and live a life of purpose and humility." The group returned to Udara, where the villagers welcomed them with open arms. Okeke's life took a new turn. He became a respected elder in the village, known for his wealth, not just wealth, but for his wisdom and compassion. When the harvest season arrived, the fields yielded a bountiful crop, and Okeke kept his promise to the people. They celebrated with a grand feast, where everyone shared in the fruits of their labor. Laughter and music filled the air, and the bonds of community were stronger than ever. Nkem, now frail but proud, watched his son with tear-filled eyes. "You have made me proud, my son. I am happy you now know being a virtuous man with a good name is more than wealth." The moral of the story is, the pursuit of wealth is not inherently wrong, but when it blinds us to the values of love, humility, and community, it becomes a curse. True riches lie in the bonds we forge, the love we receive and give, and the wisdom we gain through life's trials. May we all seek a life of balance where material success does not come at the expense of our humanity. And that's our story for today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment for more stories.